Welcome to Supporting Your Child to Become Secondary School Ready. First of all, thank you for taking the time to have a look through this presentation. Hopefully you will find some of the ideas that we can give you helpful to supporting your child over the next few months in their lead up to secondary school. First of all, I want to start with why it's important to be secondary school ready. We'll talk quite a few times throughout the presentation about how important it is for children to have a strong foundation of knowledge before they go to secondary school. Secondary schools will often build upon this knowledge, and if the foundations aren't there and they're not secure, it can often mean that it is harder for children to learn the secondary school content, and many more gaps in learning can appear. We will be covering many things throughout this presentation, but the main point will be to give you an idea of what the end of Key Stage 2 expectations are, particularly in maths. The importance of a strong foundation, as we've already looked and discussed, particularly in times tables. How we are going to be supporting your child within school, and what can be done at home to further support your child to become secondary ready. Well, first of all, I want to show you a problem that the children will have to be able to answer by the end of the year to prove that they are secondary ready. This is a typical maths problem, a multi-step maths problem. So a square tile measures 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters. A rectangular tile is 3 centimeters longer, 2 centimeters narrower than the square tile. Your children will need to be able to work out what the difference in area is between the two tiles. There are many factors involved in answering a question like this, and a lot of subject knowledge that is required. So I'm going to look at that in a little bit more detail next. So the first thing that stands out within this problem is the subject-specific vocabulary. Children will need to know what the words like narrower mean, difference, and what calculation that links to. Words like area, they're going to need to know what area is, all before they can start solving it. Children are going to need to have knowledge of shape as well. So the difference between a square and a rectangle, fortunately in this problem they are there visually, but that isn't always the case. Children will also need to know the formula to find the area of a rectangle. For those who maybe started to already work out what the answer could be and how we're going to get there, that height times width is important, that children know that, and again cannot be taken for granted. So all of those things are going to be needed before the children even think about solving this problem. And when they do get to that point of solving this problem, they need to know which step comes first. This is a multi-step problem. So within these steps, in order to find the area, they need to be able to multiply. And in order to use a formal written method of multiplication, they need to know their times tables. We teach children that when they see difference within a problem, that tends to link to subtraction. So once they've found the area of the rectangular piece of paper and then know the area of the square piece of paper, then they'll do a subtraction in order to calculate the difference. And finally, once they've been able to do all of that, the children will need to know the measure in area of centimeters squared. Without that, the question is incorrect. So lots to do and lots to know by the end of the year in order to answer a question like this. So as a general overview of the expectations the children are required to have by the end of Key Stage 2, attached I have put this overview here. On the back or the other side is also the ones for reading and writing, but as I'm mainly focusing on maths here, there are a few things that stand out in terms of size and amount of content within each section. For example, fractions is a big box. A lot of children need to have extensive knowledge of fractions, probably even further than I was taught, you were taught as children. Another one that stands out is measure, quite a big box for measure as well. And that I'll come to later, but measure can be sort of supported through a lot of practical means as well within real life situations. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but um, children are going to need to know everything on this sheet in order to become secondary school ready. They're going to need to be able to answer questions and problems linked to all of these points. Throughout the term of their time in year 6, we will be teaching them all of the required knowledge they need. For some kids, the sort of 5-6 months that we have left to do that, might not be enough. So the reason I'm showing you is so that further support can happen at home when children are looking at homework, when they are going through study revision books that we will be giving them. This sheet can be used alongside it as a tick sheet for things they can do, things that they maybe need to work on a little bit more, and so support at home can be a little bit more focused. Now you can be aware of what it is the children are expected to know. Within school, we are doing many things to support your child to become secondary school ready in all the subjects, but I'm going to go through the specific ones for maths. Firstly, we have smaller maths groups, which allow the learning and the support given to be tailored to individual children. Each lesson focuses on arithmetic and reasoning skills, where the first 10 minutes as sort of a warm-up has a reasoning or arithmetic focus. Specific teaching of problem solving happens within lessons, as well as content needed to answer the calculation. The question I've already shown you just highlights that children need an extensive knowledge of how to solve problems, as well as the vocabulary around them, not just being able to find area. We will be providing revision and study books for children. Thursday lunchtime, Mrs. Reed is going to be running a maths support club. If your child is feeling they're struggling with a certain subject, or if they have not had a very successful lesson this week, Mrs. Reed is there on Thursday lunchtime to offer more support. On a Friday lunchtime, I will be holding a homework support club. That can be just giving children a room to do their homework in before the weekend. We don't want children to be spending hours and hours on homework at the weekend and in the evenings. We know that rest and recuperation is just as important as the hard work. So attending the Friday lunchtime homework club will give the children opportunity to either get further support on their homework if they're not quite understanding it, and a chance to do it before the weekend. Weekly focused interventions by teachers and learning support staff are providing opportunities to consolidate learning. If children have been identified as maybe struggling in a certain subject, we are giving them extra support in the afternoons should they need it. And we are providing plenty of reward time and mindfulness time. Again, it's important that even though children work hard, they're also rewarded for that hard work, and we are making sure that those rewards and that mindfulness downtime is also in place within our timetable. So I'm now coming on to the importance of having a strong foundation in math. My favourite quote here, "You can't build a great building on a weak foundation," just sort of summarises how important primary school is for children in secondary school, because without that strong foundation, secondary school teachers and children cannot build on that learning. Without strong times table knowledge, problem solving knowledge, without the content that primary school are teaching, secondary school cannot build and develop that. So I'm going to give you an example here of how important it is to have a solid foundation, and specifically times tables. This is another example of a question that children are going to need to be able to answer by the end of the year. The area of a rugby pitch is 7,108 square meters. A football pitch measures 137 meters by 82 meters. Again, here just another example also of knowing vocabulary. such as square meters and what that looks like, how much larger is the area of the football pitch than the area of the rugby pitch? And again, more vocabulary rather than saying difference this time, it's how much larger. Can children recognise that it's asking the same thing? And again, knowing area and the formula to solve area within these pitches. So let me just break down this problem and how children would solve this problem having that strong foundation in maths. So the first thing we teach children to do is to become the problem, or picture the problem, or even draw the problem. So we would encourage them to draw the two pitches. We know the area of the rugby pitch, 7,108 square meters, and we know the sides, the length and the width of our football pitch. So drawing that can often help children to understand what the problem is about. Similarly, if there are problems about people buying copious amounts of melons in a supermarket, getting children to picture being that person taking the melons off of the shelf in order to help solve and understand what it's asking them to do. This problem has two steps here. First of all, we'll have to find the area of the football pitch by multiplying the two lengths together, and we would teach children to do that using a formal written method. So a child with a strong foundation will know these times tables off by heart. They will know no need of other strategies in order to solve or complete that written method. And then step two here, to find how much larger one is than the other, or the difference. We go back to that subtraction, and again, we would encourage children to use that formal written method when we need to. So now let's have a look at an example where a child simply just doesn't know or isn't secure in their 7 and 8 times table, and how this problem now becomes so much more complex. So step one is still the same, multiplying those two lengths. However, the first part of our written method is 2 times 7, and without knowing 2 times 7, and that's sort of 7 times table, instantly step 2 becomes a calculation. We have to calculate and figure out what 2 times 7 is, possibly using a different strategy. Next, we have 7 times 8, and again, it adds a third step into our calculation because we have to do a separate little bit of jotting, or we have to use a separate strategy in order to work out this within my original written method. Then we've got 8 times 3. Again, just not knowing or being secure in those 7 and 8 times table, and suddenly I've had to use my other strategies 3 times, making my problem now 5 steps long. And that then becomes unmanageable for children, where they have this perception of, I'm struggling, I can't do it, I can't get to the answer because their problem is too long now. Where it being 5 steps is very unmanageable. And by the time you get to step 3 and 4, you might have even forgotten about what you have to do at the end and do that subtraction. And many children will leave it there. They will. So just not knowing or being secure in that 7 and 8 times table has a big ramification on the children's understanding and being able to break the problems down into the correct steps and not adding extra steps in for themselves. So again, to highlight the importance of that strong foundation, particularly in times tables, I put together a little spider diagram to show how the children will be using times table knowledge within the topics that we are going to be teaching. And all apart from some shape, it is everything that will be taught in year 6. So everything the children build to be secondary school ready already requires that solid foundation of times tables. And without that, that is where the struggle comes in and the hard work comes in, and those extra steps in order to solve problems occur. This will be useful to use alongside the other resources I'm giving you with your children, just to see and talk about the upcoming topics. We're currently teaching a lot of fractions work, so looking to see specifically which area of fractions children are going to need their times table most, and supporting and doing extra work in order to fully understand those topics that are being taught. So we recognise for many children that the barrier around times tables is often memory and just remembering all of those numbers and how they link to two other numbers when you multiply them together. So one way around this is to go down a strategy route rather than a memory route. So one thing that we will be doing with the children quite intensely over the next few months to get them secondary ready is to use multiplication boards. Now in multiplication boards, let's say we're looking at the 6 times table here, we will have our multiplicand of 6 going along the top, and we will label each of these boxes, the first one, the second one, the third one, all the way up to the 10th one. We will then ask the children, okay, so which of the 6 times table are the easy ones? So this is the first box, just the number itself, 6. This is the 5th box and the 10th box. So by the time children leave the infant school, they are able to do the 10 times table, and in order to then get the 5th box, we will be looking just to half it. So those are the easy ones. So in terms of the strategies used, we will always start with the 3 easy times tables. Then we can go in a little bit more detail, and instead of the way I learnt it and the way I'm sure some of you learnt your times tables was to go through them in order, 6, 12, 18. We will now teach children to use doubling strategies in order to work out the missing gaps here. So for example, if we know 1 times 6, do we know 2 times 6? We can double it. If we know 2 times 6, do we know 4 times 6? So we can now fill in the 4th one. Rather than try and do it in order and look at the 3rd box, we can skip that, go to the 4th one, because my question might only be asking me 4 times 6. I don't need to know 3 times 6 to answer 4 times 6. If I know the 4th one, do I now know the 8th one? I can double it again. If I know the 2nd one, now I can start filling in some of the other gaps. Do I know the 3rd one? Now, 2 ways children can do that. We've just worked out the 4th one, so we could take away 1 lot of 6, or we know the 2nd one and we can add 1 lot of 6. So again, more strategies for children to work out one of those boxes, again, instead of listing them all. If I know the 3rd one, am I able to find or calculate the 6th one? Again, by doubling it. If I know the 3rd one again, can I use that to find the 9th one by tripling? Or could I use strategies such as the 10th one, take away 1 lot of 6? That always leaves us with the 7th one, and sometimes the trickier one, but often the one with the most strategies in order to calculate. If a child is required to answer 7 times 6, if we know the 5th one, which is an easy one, and the 2nd one, arguably also quite easy to know, then we can add those two together. 5 and 2 make 7. So we can add those two, 12 and 30, make 42. Likewise, we could add the 3rd and the 4th one. We could add the 6th and the 1st one, or we could do the 10th one, take away the 3rd one. All of these strategies, depending on the numbers, make times tables easier to learn. Now, if we've been able to figure out the 6 times table, we can then do the 12 times table just as easy, because once children recognise that as you go along the 6 times table, all you are doing is doubling again, we can find out the 12 times table just as quick. So if I wanted to know 6 times 12 and I knew 6 times 6, I know that I can just double that. So this is a good strategy for children to work out times tables without having to list them all in order and take that precious time and add in that extra step to solving problems in maths. So this is attached also as a document that you can use. Those who came to the meeting received a laminated strip of that. They can be collected from the school. I've got plenty spare that can be collected, along with whiteboard pens for children to practice this at home. We will be teaching children the script basically at the top, so children will have a good knowledge of the order in which to use this strategy. So the easy ones, 1, 5, 10. Then I can do the second one, the fourth one, the eighth one, the third one, the sixth one, the ninth one, and then finish with the seventh. That will be a process that will be ingrained within the children so that they can take that into secondary school as a method, as a strategy to work out times tables. So please come and collect one of those, or children, and take them home. I just need to know how many I need to print off if I run out, or things like that. So that is a good way to combat the memory problem and giving children strategies. Now, likewise, here on the right hand side, if children can remember ways to find the third one, the fourth one, the seventh one, without having to write down the whole times tables, then that will speed everything up for them within problems. So on the right hand side here is a little cheat sheet on how you would find each one. So the fifth one, the seventh one, whichever one it is, there's a little cheat sheet there. So it's just, rather than knowing your times tables, all the numbers and how they link to two others, if we know 12 strategies to find 1 to 12, then we can apply that to any of the numbers. Doesn't matter which ones they are. Likewise, learning of times tables is always enhanced through playing games. Here are 3 websites that are really useful for playing games. All I did to find these was type in times table games into Google, and these are the first 3 that come up. Top Marks and Math Games are particularly good, and times table offer a wide variety as well. So, what can your child do to help become secondary ready? Well, playing times table games online is something that can be done at home. Often within our busy timetable, we don't always have time to give children, and we don't always have the resources, laptops and such, available to us regularly. Other year groups may be using them, so times table games online at home. Using the revision book that we will be handing out shortly will be a good way of children to just do that little bit of extra consolidation in whatever they have learned. It could be something they learned last week in order to keep themselves ticking over. Completing homework is important. We will always focus the homework on the topic that we learned the week before as a consolidation, another chance to have a go and to convert that learning to children's long-term memory, and therefore will not be forgotten. Ask for support is key. We will mark books and we will talk to children in class, but actually if they are really struggling, telling us is the most important thing, and asking for a little bit of extra support, whether it be a maths club, in a homework club, or whether it's just a break time or lunchtime. Can you just go over this with me one more time? So children take an account for their learning and not just accepting, oh, that was difficult, and instead saying, that was tough, what can I do in order to better understand that? I'm going to go and ask. Make the most of lessons and come to lessons with the best attitude and focus is one of the most important things that children can do over the next few months. Alongside that, resting and eating correctly and sleeping enough and having that rest time is also just as important. I know that when I'm hungry or when I'm tired, that's all I can think about, no matter what anyone else is saying. So having those basic needs met, resting and having that downtime, will mean that children are able to better focus within class. So finally, I just want to end with what you as parents can do to further support your child to become secondary ready. The biggest thing for us is encouragement. Children need to know that they are doing the right thing and that there is always support there. Encouragement also to do that little bit of extra, to do that homework regularly, to do that little extra times table practice. It also goes a long way. We encourage children to work little and often. 5, 10, 15 minutes every night is much better than an hour on a Sunday. Children are able to convert that learning to long-term memory with little and often, rather than a one-off longer time. One thing that I think is valuable, and actually only parents can really do it, because that is when children are in the real world with you, is to provide them with practical and real world opportunities to think mathematically and problem solve. So some examples here, if I'm thinking about time, asking the children, or how long until you have football training, gymnastics, to encourage them to work out these everyday problems that we might take for granted. Can they do it? Because that is what's required of them in order to be on time for lessons, as an example, in secondary school. Working with money, if you're at the shops, and children are able to add up the shopping that you've done, and maybe not if you're going for a big shop, possibly it might take them some while, but can children add up the items and then asking them, right, how much change am I going to get from £10, from £20, from £50? One thing that we are going to be going on to in a topic soon is ratio. It's specific to Year 6, but that can already be put into day-to-day context without even using that scary word of ratio. For example, when you're cooking, if a child is cooking with you and you have a recipe that requires 200 grams of flour for 2 people, asking them, okay, what if 4 people were here? How many grams of flour are we going to need? And recognizing that I'm doubling that. What if it was 8 people here? What if my whole family were here? What if it was just one person and I'm going to have to half my ingredients? And that instantly gives children that consolidation of what we are going to be teaching in class, and also realizing that we use maths in everyday life constantly. Finally, one of the big things that you can do to further support your child is to provide that structure and routine within their lives, doing 10 minutes of reading, 10 minutes of times tables before bed, as an example, and having that as a regular routine. And also working alongside your child when possible. One thing that I'm often asked is, well, I'm not sure how you do it at school. It's different to how I did it in when I was taught. The best thing for you to do in that case, and children as well, is if there's something that is an area that your child is struggling with, is simply on YouTube, type in whatever the area is, dividing fractions, and with those words tutorial Year 6 after it comes up with videos on how Year 6 teachers teach whatever that topic is, dividing fractions. So a simple resource that we will all generally have access to can be used in order to further support your child. And that video can be watched again and again and again and again. I think it was Elon Musk once said that teachers will eventually become irrelevant because we can learn everything we need to off the internet. And it's scarily, he's kind of not wrong, because some teacher somewhere will have put whole maths lessons on how to divide fractions onto YouTube for children to help support them exactly how we would need them to be. So finally, I would ask any questions. So if you have any questions regarding the PowerPoint slides here, or anything in terms of your child's own individual learning, please don't hesitate to contact their teacher either via the school office or phone call, and we will make sure that we can clear up any concerns you have. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that has helped, and please download or get in touch if you have anything you need, any other resources that you think you might require. Thank you very much, and take care.